Morning. Hello, can I have your attention? Good morning. I'm Tony Bannon. I'm the director at the Burchfield Penney Art Center. I've been gone for 16 years. I was director here for 10 years before leaving for a stint in Rochester, and I just wanted to share with you entrepreneurs why I came back to Buffalo. This is an exciting can-do opportunity for this city, and I think it's manifest in this building. I would hope that you spend some time after your session today to look at what unarguably would be a masterpiece gallery development here. This is Charles Guathame's last building before he died, and the galleries are at a masterpiece level. It will be our task as the Museum of Western New York Achievement to be sure that we design and inhabit those galleries with masterpiece events. And with your help, we will do that, because together it should be our ambition to build the culture, to create the culture for Buffalo and for Western New York. So if you have the time, please do enjoy the galleries with our compliments, and indeed return often for conversations like this that we hope to engender here at the Burchfield Penney Art Center. Now, Eric Riesch is the co-founder and CEO of Campus Labs, and he's a board member of Z80, and he is our leader today. Here is Eric.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Feeding Innovation, the first of a series of guest speaker lunches that will be sponsored by Z80 Labs that will bring the leading minds of entrepreneurship to Buffalo to engage and inspire. Now, while I'm happy to introduce this event and the debut of Z80 Labs, it's something that we're very proud of, we've produced a quick video introduction that speaks much better than I could, and if you care about Buffalo as much as I do, I think you'll find this quite interesting and inspiring.
Droves, and it makes me sick. And I watch the talented people that have left this community, and it really upsets me. I'll tell you a story. 6:30 in the morning, I'm walking around Delaware Park Lake. It was one of these glorious mornings. The sky was blue, the sun was radiant yellow. I was starting to think about all of my friends that I grew up with in that neighborhood, all of whom have left Buffalo, and how successful they've been everywhere they've gone. I took out my camera phone. I took a picture of the lake, and I sent a picture to all of them telling them how much I missed them and how much the difference would have been if they were still in Buffalo. And every one of them wrote back, what a gorgeous picture, and you know that if we could, we would be there. Unfortunately, the opportunities weren't there, so we had to leave. I think about that a lot. You know, it's a wonderful place to live, and now we're going to try to make it a wonderful place to work by creating jobs. Jobs for people that are younger, that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to be innovators, that want to create and change the world. And that's what we hope to do. Our objective, our goal, our vision is for Z80 Labs to change the way Buffalo thinks forever.
To me, Z80 is a place where young entrepreneurs can go in Buffalo to experiment and to hopefully build successful companies.
We'd like to be able to take folks that are on a path of success and just simply improve their odds as much as possible.
We have a very talented, world-class group of people that are dedicating their time and resources to making this a world-class incubator.
There'll be no less than 15 of the top 20 venture capital firms in America in Buffalo over the next year. They'll come here and look at these companies and give them some advice, some direction, some guidance, maybe deploy and do a business deal with them. All we can do is create the environment, but we'll bring the world here, and I hope that changes the way people think.
Only by passion, entrepreneurial spirit, hard work, and intelligence to make some magic happen. And I do believe that with Z80 and the people that are involved, we can help increase the probability of that.
I'm hopeful that within the next 2 years, we have at least 2 companies that graduate out of here. And graduating means you get 10 toys or more, you gotta leave. And that we are able to start a couple of businesses that go out on their own and get funding.
Clearly, our hope that some of these companies will grow into significant businesses.
We're trying to give back and make sure that we can leverage our experience and the mistakes that we've made and the successes we've had and be able to turn that into a very successful mentorship program for people who are in the Z80 Labs.
The first company that's coming in here, they have this great idea for a business, and now it's up to us to help them find the right road to a commercialization and to help build a product.
The opportunity for these companies to be centered here is mostly because they start here.
There's 65 universities within 100 miles of Buffalo. I can't even imagine how many people are being educated just 100 miles from here.
Genius can come from anywhere. The question is really what individuals are going to make it happen.
Well, I'm excited because I know this works. And, it's a matter of doing what you've learned to do in the past. We've been able to do it for ourselves. We've been able to do it, in close association with a few other companies. Sycamore and Campus Labs, who are partners in this business, are good examples of it. So there is every reason in the world to believe that we can end up doing it with others as well. And that, again, is exciting because that is a new economy.
I believe that we have an obligation, because we've been lucky, to do something. And it's easy to give checks to charity. That's not going to solve Buffalo's problem. We need jobs. That's all over everything else. We need to create jobs in Western New York. And if I can help, if Ron Shriver can help, if the rest of our team here can help, we are prepared to take a stand and try to make the difference.
Now, in order to bring this idea to reality, the Z80 board recognized that we'd certainly need a quarterback. This person would not only need the experience and perspective in developing high-growth technology ventures, but also an understanding of the unique characteristics of our community. After an exhaustive nationwide search, the board identified Dan Magnashevsky, it won't be the last time his name is butchered, as an exemplary young professional that can manage and lead this ambitious endeavor. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dan to say a few words before we introduce our speaker.
Thank you. So I just want to give a quick overview about Z80 Labs, what we are, some of the stipulations, and what we're trying to do and really why we're doing it. Z80 Labs is an internet technology focused incubator. Our goal is really to be able to ignite the internet-based technology sector in Western New York and try to give it a kickstart that we don't currently have and give it the focus and the energy, also providing the experts in the area. In addition to that, we're looking to provide more funding and make it available to companies and startups with great ideas who normally can't find funding locally and need to go elsewhere. So the co-founders are Jordan Levy and Ron Shriver, as you saw from the video. Mark Zagoria is our manager of finance. He'll be helping with the day-to-day operations, any of the financials, anything in that realm. We lean on Mark to help out the startups. I'm the Chief Pie, the Chief Principal Innovationist, and as Eric said, my goal is to go out in the community, build a buzz around Z80, build a buzz around entrepreneurship, go out to the universities and deal with industry and get everyone working together and promoting entrepreneurship as an actual career path that students can learn to take and bring them in and give them every opportunity they can to succeed. And I'm there to help them with anything they need, to create more events like this so that we're getting people talking, meeting, interacting. Besides that, it's all day-to-day operations, so I'm there to help the startup succeed. On our investment committee, we have Ron Frankel, CEO of Synacor, David Kimmelberg of Seneca Holdings Corp., and Eric Reich over here. These are the people who are, everyone here is on the investment committee and will be taking part in choosing which startups come in, which get investment, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the real question is, why are we doing this, and why is Jordan and Ron got together and put this together? Essentially, it's just building the technology startup ecosystem in Western New York. As I mentioned before, we really need to kickstart this sector, a high-growth sector in Western New York. It's a low-cost way of starting a business, and it can happen here in Buffalo. In addition to that, we're trying to really change the mindset and the mentality of the people in the entire area that you don't need to go get a job. You don't need to look for a job. You can create your own jobs, and we're really trying to push that with students, but also people that are already in industry. We also want to give you the opportunity for the entrepreneurs that are currently here to have access, the same opportunities available in New York City or Silicon Valley. And in reality, we want you to build the next great technology company and do it here in Buffalo. So we have a bunch of services that we offer to all of our incubator companies. In addition to the office space, phone, internet, tech support, accounting, legal, we also have a lot of our corporate sponsors have donated their services with HR, PR, and other tech support that you get by joining in the incubator. But the most important part that I think is getting access to people like Jordan and Ron, and being able to leverage their network and be able to talk to them and other industry leaders. Getting access to that is something that we really haven't had in Buffalo, and that's the real difference here and the big change that we're implementing. So more what we offer is the weekly educational programs where we can bring in people from local industry and local experts and people from outside the area and bring them in to give classes and everything from finance and software development, iOS development, any type of skills that these companies need to learn, and helps to hear from experts in the industry, be able to bring them in on a weekly basis and be able to really give that education portion of starting a business and give that to the startups. So we also have mentorships where we'll create teams around experts in your industry and pair you up appropriately. This past weekend we had Megan Smith, who's a VP at Google. She's a Buffalo native, and came back, checked out the space, and we got her to, she agreed to be to chair our advisory committee. So we'll be going out to other people who have gone out in the world and done great things in technology and business, and be able to have a nice advisory council where these people can come in and see what these startups are doing, offer advice. So really, really high talent that we're bringing in, and big leaders in the industry. And the advisory, and the seed funding is the other part that we're offering. It's the ability to get up to $100,000 in seed funding through a grant that we got through the Innovate New York grant through New York State. So what we ask from you and from the startups that apply, we're looking for a two-page executive summary of your business, and we have details on the website. What you're doing, the problem you're solving, how you're solving it, how you're differentiating yourself, revenue, how you plan on doing all that stuff. You need to convince two of us on that investment committee that you got something going, something good for acceptance. And what we do is we take a 5% equity in your idea or your company. In the incubator, you can figure out your idea, the monetization of it. Then you can go in front of us and in front of the investment committee, and we'll be able to do a valuation and give you funding accordingly. That funding is, as I mentioned before, the seed funding by the Empire States Development Innovate New York grant. In addition to that, the startups, for any funding that we give, the startups will need to match that funding from outside. So whether it's friends and family, parents, or just other angels and VCs in the area or outside, we require that. And you must be an incubator company. This funding is not for some other outside company. We're looking for you to be located in the incubator and helping to build that ecosystem. So just a preview of the extensive network that we have that I've mentioned previously. Today we have Fred Wilson. We had Mike Perlis before. Well, we plan on getting people like Brad Feld, Mark Pincus, Bijan Sabat, Dan Porter, and the list goes on and on. And we have all these people that are willing to come to Buffalo. And when Jordan mentioned in the video that we're bringing the world to Buffalo, we really are bringing the world to Buffalo and giving you all the exposure that you need. Of course, we want to thank all the sponsors who provide services and everything that help make us successful. SoftBank Capital, State of New York Empire State Development, NYCRF, the Buffalo News, Synacor, Campus Labs, HP, Hover Networks, PC Business Solutions, Boxy, and Creo 451. So the main goal is to change the way Buffalo thinks forever, and we want you to come join us and be part of this future. Thank you. So I'd like to bring up right now, I'd like to introduce Ron Shriver, who is one of the co-founders of Z80.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Before I start, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speakers tonight, the talent, if you'll have it. But before I start, I'd like to thank our staff, our team, for the hard work over the last couple of days. We had a nice opening last night. 200 to 300 people showed up. We had a lot of pizza left over, but that just goes with the price of doing it. And in particular, I want to thank my partner Jordy. This is his baby. This is his idea. And as you can see by this video, the passion. I'm telling you, this is so real for him. It's infectious. I get excited about it, because he's so excited about it. And when we first talked about it, he said, this is what I want to do. And I say, okay, then let's go do it. I said, what do you want me to do? He says, well, you got to be there. Be there. Sit in the incubator, because we're gonna do what we can for these companies. So we're making that commitment. But this guy bleeds red and blue for Buffalo. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to see. So, Jordy, thanks, wherever you are. Are you out there someplace, I would imagine? I want to first introduce Grove Potter, who's our moderator. Grove Potter has been a business editor at the Buffalo News for the last 12 years. He's a Buffalo native. He's worked at newspapers in Boston, Massachusetts, Ashbury Park, New Jersey, Sarasota, Florida, Middleton, New York. He's either ascending or can't hold a job. I'm not sure which one it is. Before getting the opportunity to return home and pursue his career at the News. He's a graduate of the University of Vermont with an MBA from the University at Buffalo. Grove writes for the financial desk at the Buffalo News and covers the local economy and local businesses with a focus on how companies succeed and thrive in a slow-growing environment. The need to invigorate the local economy, especially for startups, what makes today's discussion for Grove and with Freddie Wilson particularly important. So with that, please welcome Grove Potter. Thank you, Grove, for helping us and joining us. Thank you. And you shouldn't take it easy on Fred, okay? He can handle it. Our guest speaker today is Fred Wilson. Fred is the first of many that we will bring to Buffalo, and we will pursue a format very similar to this. Those names that you saw on there are not good intentions. Those are people that have already committed that they're going to come. So, we look forward to doing these sort of events, as often as we can. But there's a lot of people that are in line, so I think that we will be doing this with some frequency. But it is my pleasure to introduce Fred Wilson, today's speaker. The invitation to this event says famed venture capitalist Fred Wilson. That Meredith came up with, and I got a big chuckle on that. But actually, for Jordy and myself, he's been Freddie for the last 21 years, first as our business partner, then as our professional partner, often a co-investor, but most importantly, our friend. All of the accolades that come to Fred's way are much deserved, as Fred is in an elite class among his peers in the venture capital world, having consistently delivered extraordinary returns to his investors that have in aggregate returned tens of billions of dollars to them. There are only a small handful of investors on the planet that can make such a claim. So it's analogous in my mind to something like the Super Bowl MVP, when you only have a few. Fred started his career at Euclid Partners in New York, and in 1991, his very first investment as an associate, he made the good decision to invest in a Buffalo-based firm called Upgrade Corporation that Jordy and I co-founded. The Upgrade investment worked out pretty well later, and I think Upgrade was Fred's first liquidity event, for an investment that he actually led at Euclid. But Fred also ended up doing a bunch of other good things at Euclid and produced good results for the firm. The partners there knew a good thing when they saw it, so they offered Fred a junior partnership, sent him out to raise more money, and in fact, we can certainly lay claim to at least an assist on pushing Fred to finally take that leap, as Flatiron was formed in partnership with SoftBank, as well as Chase Capital as the primary limited partners. Flatiron's first investment, interesting for this particular crowd, was called Yoyodyne, which was later sold to Yahoo rather quickly, so they got on the scoreboard pretty quick. But what's interesting about Yoyodyne is that the founder is Seth Godin, who's also a Buffalonian. So, he's developing a track record in both of these firms to basically come to Buffalo for some reason. The next two investments were Multics and Geocities. They were also terrific. Multics went public, but Geocities was essentially hitting a grand slam when it sold to Yahoo for $3.5 billion, making Flatiron a member of the elite billion-dollar club for exits. Geocities was essentially the first business that focused on community, and many would consider it the forerunner to the social web that we see today. Other investments that were notable in Flatiron included ComScore, the New York Times Digital, Star Media, VitaminShop.com, and there were others. We don't need to dwell on the dark years of the early 2000s, because we all felt that pain. All of us in technology, the venture capital community, and business in general. But with that, entrepreneurs don't know much or care much about macroeconomics, so innovation and opportunities just press on, and in 2004, Fred started Union Square Ventures in partnership with Brad Burnham, where he's still the managing partner today. Union Square has clearly established itself as the premier venture capital firm in New York, and clearly one of the best in the country for that matter. Its investments include a litany of major league winners, including Twitter, Tumblr, Foursquare, Zynga, Tengen, and Etsy, and there are many more, where the aggregate realization have returned billions of dollars to the investors. Fred is a religious blogger, waking up early each day. As a matter of fact, I can always, if I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I can email Fred, and he's going to answer right away. But he's a religious blogger. He wakes up early, and he expresses his thoughts in his blog called ABC, ABC, Muses of a Venture Capitalist, which now has in excess of 300,000 followers, Fred? What's the current number? About 300,000 followers. He's also focused on giving back and is involved in numerous philanthropic efforts, including the concept of venture philanthropy, which he talked to me about many years ago, where it's sort of like when you go to Vegas and you end up making a bet for the dealer in hopes that the dealer gets to win and put some more money in his pocket. Get a good multiple for a charity, and that's a good thing. He's active in the community. He's worked on initiatives including the redevelopment of Union Square, Madison Square in New York City. He's a board member of DonorsChoose.org, which is an online charity that allows you to connect individuals to classrooms in need and other things, that are relevant in his life as well as in the city. Fred lives in New York with his lovely wife Joanne. They have 3 children, great kids. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT and an MBA from the Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome an extraordinary investor, a humanitarian, a philanthropist, and an all-around good guy, Freddie Wilson.
Ron, I need you to rewrite my Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
You hit all the highlights. You hit all the highlights. Thank you.
That was tremendous. I want to piggyback on something Ron said about Fred's website, avc.com. Bookmark it. It's a fascinating daily read. It's got a great vibe. It's very positive, and it's got a high intellectual quotient to it. And it really, you feel smarter after you read it every day. It takes you places you might not have been before. So I highly recommend that. One note that he mentioned 300,000 readers. Fred has 225,000 followers on Twitter. So almost 250,000 people think his thoughts are worth following and being in touch with. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to start this off with some basic questions so we all kind of understand where we're coming from. Can you please explain briefly what venture capitalists do and how it's different from other forms of private investment?
So the venture capitalist's job is to become the financial partner to entrepreneurs. And that's really, in a nutshell, what it's all about. We find early stage companies somewhere between 1 person and 10 people that are working on an interesting project, and we supply them with capital, and we take an equity interest in their companies. We often join their boards, and we become business partners and hopefully close confidants of the founders and management of the company. That's our job. Those investments will be long-term investments. They're typically held for 5 to 10 years. I'm still on the boards of some companies that we invested in the 90s. So these can be 12, 14, 15-year projects. So you have to be patient, and you have to be engaged and involved and supportive. We typically go out and we raise money to make these investments from large investors. We have state pension funds, we have banks, insurance companies, those kinds of people who commit money to our partnerships. We then go invest that capital plus some of our own capital in these companies, and then over time, as we get returns on these investments, we distribute that back to these large investors. So that's how the business works. I think what makes venture capital different than other forms of investing, if you compare it to mutual funds or hedge funds or private equity buyout, it's very focused on company creation. We're not interested in making a quick hit or a trade or buying a business cheap and selling it more expensively. We're interested in essentially the people who can turn nothing into something, an idea into a business. And so I think in some ways it's a very pure form of investing. And it's also has the benefit of being where a lot of the job creation is in our economy. And so the capital that goes in to help start companies is also very good for the economy and job creation. So I feel it's a very positive form of investing. A lot of people, these days have negative thoughts about what goes on Wall Street, and for obvious reasons, there's lots of things that go on Wall Street that aren't necessarily good for the economy or good for people or society. But I think venture capital really is a very positive and good form of investing in large measure.
Thank you. How did a mechanical engineer from MIT find his way to venture capitalism?
Oh, that's a great question. I got out of college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I moved to New York because my wife, at the time, not my wife, Ronnie mentioned Joanne's my wife, wanted to be in New York. So I said, I'll move to New York with you. And I wanted to do something in technology. And there wasn't a lot of technology going on in New York. There was a lot of investing going on in New York. So I started to think, well, maybe the best thing for me to do if I want to live and work in New York is to figure out how to work at the intersection of investing and technology. I did some reading. I found out about this thing called venture capital. I did some more reading about it. I started to figure out how the industry worked. And ultimately, I talked my way into my first job, which was at Euclid Partners, which is where I was working when I met Ron and Jordan. So it was a little bit of, trying to figure out how to make my life and my wife's life work in the same city at the same time.
Do you seek out ideas, or do they come to you?
Both. Both. What I have learned to do is to be very focused on a certain kind of company. The kinds of companies that we invest in at Union Square Ventures are companies that are built on the web or the mobile web. And we're even more specifically interested in companies that are creating networks of businesses and individuals that get put together in a large, ideally tens of millions of nodes on a network that can create transactions or media or things like that. So things like Twitter and Etsy and Kickstarter, these are all networks. So that's what we're investing in. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the only good thing to invest in venture capital. It's far from the only good thing. But what I've learned is you focus, you became a domain expert in that area, you articulate why you want to invest in that area, you make sure as many people as possible know about you and what you're interested in and why you can add value, and then the opportunities come to you, but you also see opportunities because of the fact that you're so focused, and so you can go chase those opportunities.
See, what type? We know that tech companies might be interested to a VC. What companies are not good matches for VCs? Would you invest in a bicycle factory, for instance?
We wouldn't. You could make an argument why a VC would be interested in a bicycle factory. It would have to be a venture capital firm who understood manufacturing and consumer products and things like that. The key question in venture capital is, can you make 10 times your money on any individual investment? That's the question for the investor. I'll come back to why that is. And the key question for the entrepreneur is, do I want to dilute my ownership and give up some measure of control in my business in order to get this capital? So if you think about those two requirements, you can start to think about what things work and what things don't work. If I'm going to build a business that could make me $500,000 a year, or maybe even $1 million a year, so that I could feed my family and send my kids to college and live a good lifestyle, you probably don't want venture capital for that, because that's not going to give the investor 10 times their money, and you might not want to cede control and ownership of that business. But if you're building something that you think could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars in total value over a 10-year period, and you need capital to do that, and you're not thinking about it as a lifestyle business, you're thinking about it as building a large company that you would take public or potentially sell, then that might be a good category. That might be a good candidate for venture capital.
I see. The reason I asked about the bicycle factories, our history is nuts and bolts.
Right.
We manufacture things, and we're taking a different track here.
Well, let me just say that when you make software, you're making something. And I think this is something that people need to think about. The notion that we're not making things in this country anymore is true to some degree if you're thinking about making physical items. But, people who make software are making things too. And people who make movies are making things too. So that idea that we're a city that people are used to making things, I think you can still make things in America, but what we are better at than I think anywhere else in the world is making new and innovative things that haven't been imagined by other people before. The problem with making commodity items is that it's cheaper to make those items in other parts of the world where labor is a lot less expensive. And so I think where America has to focus on, and where Buffalo has to focus on, is making things that are new and different and aren't commodity. And a lot of that is happening in software today.
I see. Yeah, some folks that I speak to on the phone are fearful of VC models because of the control they lose, and the need for you to recoup your investment means selling the company or going public.
Right. Those are valid concerns. I don't want to downplay them at all. And I think entrepreneurs need to make peace with those decisions if they're going to take venture capital, which is why a lot of times entrepreneurs should decide not to take venture capital. If they don't want to sell their company, or they don't want to take it public, or they don't want to have to at least share control with an investor or maybe even cede control to an investor over time, then they should be wary of venture capital, because those are all things that happen in the venture capital model. And it's not perfect for everybody or every company, and in fact, it's probably not right for a lot of entrepreneurs. And it's important for people to understand that and not go into a venture capital investment naively.
Mm-hmm. I see. How much control do you have over companies you invested? If you only took 5%, can you call the shots if things start going south?
So I'm going to tell you two things about control, and I've learned these over the years. Control doesn't come necessarily from how much of the company you own or how many seats on the board you control. There's two places that control happens in a company. One is at the management level. The people who run the company, who are doing a good job of running the company and are moving the company forward and making good things happen, are in a very strong position of control. Investors, generally, smart investors will not mess with that. Right? So if there's a founder or a management team that is executing very well, most smart investors are going to stay away from that. They're not going to meddle in that business because investors are not, generally speaking, great operators and great managers. If they were, they'd be running companies. So smart investors stay away from that. So if you're doing a good job of running your company and you have sophisticated investors in your company, you're probably going to be in a pretty strong position of control just by virtue of the job you're doing. The other place that control happens is if you're losing money. If you're losing money and you need more money because you're running out of money, you need another round of financing, that puts your investors in a very strong position of control. They might only own 5% of the company, but if you need them to write another check, or if the market is going to want to look at them and what they do as a signal about whether more money should come in the company, that puts them in a very strong position of control. That's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand, that if you need other people to fund your business, then you are vulnerable until you raise that capital, and your existing investors are going to be in a position of a lot of strength. So the place where founders often get bounced from their companies, and that's the elephant in the room, let's put it on the table, is in that moment when the company needs another round of financing and the founder or the management team is not doing a very good job, money can't come in the company's looking like it's going to hit the wall. Investors might say, we'll put more money in the company, we need a new CEO. And that's where really the rubber meets the road in these situations. So my point is, if you're doing a good job of running the company and you don't need more money, then there's not much that investors can do to you. But if you are doing a bad job of running the company and you need more money, you're going to be very vulnerable to your investors.
Take note. Okay. How important are the people at the companies you look at? Are they? You must value them and the management,
right?
The management team versus the idea itself. Can you take one?
It's all part of this picture. So what I like to say is, it is the right person or people with the right idea at the right time, most importantly, packaged up in the right way for the market. That last bit, packaged up in the right way for the market, is the product, right? So you can have a great idea, and if you can't turn that idea into a product or service. So I always thought that we in the venture industry ought to make it easier for these people who might have the next great idea to find us. And so I started writing a blog to, one, get my name out. So at one level, it's just pure marketing. It's branding for me and my firm. But also to create some transparency in the market, to start to explain what I think are good ideas and things that I want to finance, and also to talk about things like term sheets and board seats and all these issues that weren't being talked about. And so what I would encourage entrepreneurs who are trying to find their way is to use the internet. Not just to read my blog, but there's other services out there. There's things like AngelList, which is very helpful in finding angel investors. There's things like Twitter. There's lots of venture capitalists on Twitter, and you can follow them, and you can start to get a sense for who they are and what they like to do. And And so there's a lot of ways now, I think because of the internet and social media, for entrepreneurs to start to figure out the venture capital sector and who's doing what and who are the best investors to go to if you have a hardware project, who are the best investors to go to if you have an entertainment project, who are the best investors to go to if you have a enterprise software project. That's all available now on the internet. It'll take some work to figure out, but you know, if you're hungry and scrappy and smart, you can figure out how to do that work.
You've heard the phrase, and we've heard it in the video, creating a startup ecosystem, right, to describe how a place can become fertile ground for this startup culture.
Right.
Can you talk about the steps a city can take to do that? And
yeah, so it's really important to understand that the more startups there are in a region, the more investors there are in a region, and the more talent there is in the region that likes to work in startups and knows how to work in startups, the more successful all of the participants in that system can be. It's like soup, I guess, in some ways. And that's why Silicon Valley has been the most successful startup hub in the world, is that they just have more of all of that. But there are other startup hubs, Boston, New York, Austin, Texas, Boulder, Colorado, that have emerged, and Seattle would maybe be another one that you could point to, where they have some critical mass. And so it's not, some people think it has to do with the money. It's actually, the money's important, but without a critical mass of startups and a critical mass of talented people, the money won't be there. So you need all of that. And so what I think needs to happen is a concerted effort over a period of time, and it won't happen in a year, and it might not even happen in a decade, but a concerted effort over a period of time to get more of all of those things going on in a market. I think New York as a startup community really started to emerge when the internet emerged in the mid-90s. And I feel like now, 16, 17 years later, it's really starting to flourish. So that's how long it can take. Now the reason for that is that companies get started, and a few of them are successful. Not all of them are successful, but the ones that are successful end up hiring a bunch of people. So Synacor is a good example of this. So Synacor has here now in Buffalo 300 or 400 employees. All of those employees are potentially candidates to either do their own startups or work in startups. And I'm sure that Synacor's interest in getting Z80 off the ground is not to lose its entire workforce to startups, but the point is that Synacor is like this tall tree, right? And that tree will drop seedlings over time, and from those seedlings, more companies will get started, right? And so the more Synacors there are, the more startups there are. Now the other thing that happens is that they get sold or they go public, right? So now Synacor has gone public, and the stock's done really well, knock on wood, I hope it keeps doing well. And so some people have made some money now, right? So, some investors in Synacor, like Ron and Jordan, have made some money on Synacor, and the management team of Synacor has made some money, and even some of the employees of Synacor have made some money. So they can now potentially become angel investors and help other companies get started. They can have some financial freedom to leave their salary job and go do a startup, or they can take a risk and go take a job in a startup, a 2 or 3 or 5 person startup. And so then those seedlings then grow, and 2 or 3 of those companies become successful, and then the same thing happens again. And these things happen over, it's a long gestation period. Synacor was started maybe a decade ago, so that one company took 10 years.
Right.
So maybe 3 or 4 companies will get started by people who spin out of Synacor, and maybe 2 or 3 of those companies will become successful, but that'll take another 10 years, right? So these things take time, and so the more Synacors there are, the more seedlings there can be, and then the quicker all of this can happen. Z80 Labs is another thing. So you need companies, you need successful companies, you need talent, you need a workforce, you need money, you need angel investors, and eventually you need venture capital. But you also need things like Z80, you need incubators, programs to help entrepreneurs get noticed, to get some funding, to get some feedback and some mentorship, and just to create sort of centers of excellence and attention. You need the local government to be supportive of this, and he's not spending a lot of money on it. It's cheerleading. There's a smoldering fire brewing, right? And he's pouring, gasoline on it. So the local government can be very helpful. The local institutions can be helpful. I mean, we're in an art museum, and yet we're doing this event here. So the institutions can be, places where events can happen and people can come together and mingle. That's another big thing that's important is just places where people can come together, and meetups and speaker series and lunches, and just places where networking can happen and business opportunities can create themselves. So it's not one thing, it's all those things, and you have to stick at it for a sustained period of time. And you got to accept the fact that a lot of these things will end up going nowhere. And you have to embrace failure and celebrate it. I don't mean, failure is a tough thing to celebrate, but you need to, if a company fails, I met with a woman entrepreneur who company just failed. She came to see me last week, and I said, you did a good thing. You did a startup. You got experience. You're now more valuable in the talent marketplace. Don't be down. This was great, and you didn't make any money, but it's still a good thing. And you need to have that attitude. I think that's one of the big problems, that a lot of communities are conservative, and they don't like failure, and they don't like risk-taking. And that's something you have to be able to embrace if you want to have a startup sector.
That was my next question, so I won't ask it. But yes, we epitomize that. We've almost exported all our risk takers, and we have a conservative core, and it's in our DNA.
Why is that? Why do you think? I don't mean to interview you,
no.
but why do you think that? Why do you think that Buffalo is a fairly conservative community?
I think it goes back to the paucity of jobs. If you lose your job in Buffalo, you're in trouble. You really have to scramble, or at least in the past, you've had to scramble to find a new one. So really, employees are extremely loyal, and want to stay put, just keep their heads down and work. And children grow up seeing that, and it really permeates our way of looking at the world. And the kids who grow up and say, wow, this isn't for me, they'll skedaddle to New York or California.
I get that, but there are certain kinds of skills that are extremely valuable in this economy. Obviously, software engineering would be one of them. So the first company in the Z80 Labs I met with this morning, and they have a software engineer. They have 2 interns who are software engineers. One of the co-founders is sort of VP of product, which is another skill that's in very demand right now. So even if that company were to fail, and I have no reason to believe that they will, but if they were to fail, I would see all of those people being able to get jobs right away. So one of the things I think that we have to encourage is we have to encourage our children to learn these skills that are going to be valuable in the next 50 years. So if you think you could become technical, become technical. Learn how to write software, or do creative design, or mobile design, or some of these technical skills, real skills that are in short supply. Or learn how to be a product manager and shape the development of a product. Or learn how to do sales, right? Sales is, if you're a good salesperson, you can always get a job. So, learn how to, go into these, encourage our children to go to school and study the kinds of fields that are in demand, and then we have to create the companies in Buffalo that will employ these people, right? So people getting out of the universities, the video said, Jordan said that there was some huge number of universities within 100 miles of Buffalo. So we should encourage those universities to educate these students in the fields that are important, and we should encourage those people to come to Buffalo and get those kinds of jobs. And I just did something bad to my... That's not my phone. Anyway, but we need to create those jobs for these people to get in Buffalo when they get out of these schools. And so I think part of that is if people have the confidence to know that they're not going to lose, that if they lose their job because the company goes under, they're going to have 3 job offers the next day. They'll be more inclined to take risks. And one of the key ways is to get them trained up in the jobs of the future as opposed to the jobs of the past. Maybe you put your phone here.
Sorry. It's me. Thank you. I'm a young person. It's a tough sell for me to not go to a conservative, traditional Buffalo company and consider taking a chance on a 3 or 4 person startup.
Right.
How do you sell that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. My daughter, who's about to go into her senior year in college, moved to London this summer, probably because she didn't want to live under mom and dad's roof this summer, and got a job working in a startup. And they hired her to do, she's an art major, so they hired her to do some creative design and photography for their website. It was a 2-month thing, and 2 weeks into the job, the company had an offsite. And this is like a 6 or 7 person company. And so they had this all-day offsite, and she was invited to go to the offsite. And she started telling them, well, I don't think the website looks very good, and you have a competitor who I think has a better business model, and for what I've been observing here for the past couple of weeks, I don't think that the way you're going, you're going to be successful. And so she comes in the following Monday morning, and the founder, CEO, says, we're promoting you. We're promoting you to temporary creative director. And she's job's over in like the middle of August. She's coming back. This is coming back to New York to go back to school. And I tell you the story because one of the things that you get by working in a 6 or 7 person company is you get a tremendous amount of responsibility long before you deserve it. Right? There's no reason she should be the temporary creative director of this company, other than the fact that she spouted off her mouth at a company offsite, and the CEO probably realized that she actually had a clue about what she was talking about. And so that's the reason to go work in a startup, is that you'll get more responsibility, you'll come up the learning curve more quickly, and you'll be able to learn skills and develop responsibilities and capabilities more quickly in your career than you would if you went to work for a big company. And for people who are confident, talented, and ambitious, that's the right answer for them.
I understand. I'll remember that for a story idea. Can you talk about the education of an entrepreneur? If you aspire to start a company, are you best off just jumping in or maybe working at a startup?
What I like to say is if you have an idea that you can't give up, meaning you wake up in the morning thinking about it, you go to sleep at night thinking about it, and it's just burning in you to go do it, then you should do a startup. Because you have a passion for this, and you want to go make the product and build the company, you should do that. If you don't have that idea, but you want to be in a startup, then go work for a startup and develop the relationships and skills and network that will allow you to potentially go do a startup in 3, 5, 10 years. So that's how I would advise people. Don't do a startup if you don't have an idea that's just nagging at you, because it's just too hard. If you don't really believe in the idea, you probably shouldn't do it.
How is the advent of these incubators and accelerators like Z80 Labs affecting the VCs? Is it easier to find ideas, or are some maybe not making the cut for the incubators and you're missing things?
So I think it's ultimately what's good for the entrepreneurs is going to be good for the VCs. The entrepreneurs